What is up? Welcome back to the Podium Proof F1 podcast.
Yo!
As always, my name is Frank Alessi.
I'm David Alessi.
Let's freaking get it. Much apologies for the hiatus here. Both of us had quite a bit of obligations that kind of pulled us away, and there's only so much time in the week. So got through the busy season and all the family obligations and all, so we are back.
Yes, we are. It is. It's still a little bit of my busy season as the heat is still rolling, and saving the world one AC at a time gets pretty busy. But here we are. We're back. We're gonna do our very best to get back on a schedule here, and we will try to keep you apprised as that happens and as any changes come about. But for now, we're back after Spa. So see if I can remember all the things. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Do us a favor, go find us, like us, follow us, share us, shoot us a DM. If you look right there at the bottom left of the screen, if you're catching this on YouTube, there is a QR code that'll take you to our link tree, which has all of those social medias. So feel free to scan that, find us, and give it a listen, give it a look. We appreciate it.
So going forward, we're maintaining things pretty much the same, but couple new things. We're going to be having probably many more guest appearances on the show. Hopefully a bunch of new people and a couple guys that have been on here already.
Yep.
Possibility of going live again at some point and getting that started. We're still discussing that, but would love some of your feedback on it if that's something that everybody would be interested in again. I think it's cool. It's just we gotta figure out maybe a better time slot, or we need some input on it.
Yeah, figure out some logistics on it.
Yeah, but
I think I think as of now, just to put this out there a good little bit in advance, I think we are going to try, no promises, but we are going to try to do something live while we are at or right when we get back from COTA again this year. So we will try to update everybody as those plans develop. If we can do something live while we're there, that would be incredible, but just a bit of something to look forward to. We're going to try to do something cool for that.
Next year that will happen. There will be a live on location podcast coming at you from Austin, Texas next season.
Yes.
For sure. So let's see. We've been away for a little bit, but some things remain the same. Max smashes the field. We have been away for a little bit, so here's before we get into Spa. We're gonna touch on some of the things that we've kind of missed, and then we're mainly gonna stick to Spa, and then at some point in this summer break, we're gonna have essentially a summer break episode and just kind of recap everything that we've seen so far, go in depth on the different teams, where they started, where they're at, what they're trending towards, just kind of anything and everything like that.
Yeah. Hey, before we get too far into this, you want to talk a little bourbon?
Yes. So that's another thing, in case you forgot. It's our two favorite things that we do here. We drink bourbon and we talk F1. So
sometimes in that order, sometimes not.
This is true.
So I am going to do a little Weller tonight. So we will start it off with just a good old special reserve as a nice little warm up pour, seeing as I didn't have any kind of warm up pour. Normally, especially if I'm going to go anything barrel proof, I'll normally have a little pour of something else, something a little more mild before we get this thing rolling. But I didn't do that. So we'll start that off with some Weller Special Reserve, good old 90 proof weeded bourbon, the original weeded bourbon. And Special Reserve. If you can find it, it's what, a $25 bottle. I mean, it's good. It's not anything to write home about. It's a good weeded bourbon. But after this one's down, we will move on to the blue label, which would be the Weller Full Proof.
Show off.
My one and only lottery winning. And hey, while I've got the mic, I'm going to make note of this so as not to get in trouble with my sister-in-law. Let it be known that my podium proof charcuterie board is on display, although you can't really see it where I have it sitting, but it is here and it is being used. So I don't want to get in trouble. There we go.
So much appreciate that.
Yep. Shout out Alapoxy Designs. Go find her on Facebook or Instagram Messenger. Get all your epoxy charcuterie boards or cheese trays or coasters. There we go. All kind of stuff.
Anything epoxy
stuff. Yeah.
Hence the name Alapoxy.
All right, what you got there?
I need to talk to that woman about throwing us some kind of sponsorship here.
Right? I mean, I figured you had an in with upper management or something, but
yeah,
geez.
I fund it, so I could probably pull some strings. Well, I say funded. Funded. I was the startup. So I'm going with probably one of my, I'm not going to say favorite. I feel like I throw that around a good bit on here when I'm talking about bourbon because I just get pumped up with whatever's in my hand. But a very, very good, solid bourbon. Blue Run, High Rye edition. They got a bunch of different ones. This is the High Rye. And 55.5 proof, 111. This is going to be my warm-up, so let's go.
55.5 ABV, not proof.
Yeah, no, 111 proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Look, this is one of those bottles. Blue Run isn't cheap. I think they usually run anywhere from maybe $70 to $100, depending on which version it is, which release it is. But every one I've had so far, this is a bottle that I don't mind splurging a little bit for because it's really good, really, really solid.
I'm trying to remember if I tasted that one last time I was down there.
You did. I brought it to Coda last year.
Yeah, that's right. You did. I think we cracked it there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's jump into this.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert. Max won again. Also, as a little teaser for 2024 for our on-site podcast, if anybody's there, feel free to stop by. A little enticement will be we will have a shit ton of badass freaking bourbon.
Oh,
anybody would be more than welcome to sample.
Absolutely.
Sample or get hammered. Either way.
Yeah.
We're not stingy. So anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, even though we really could just start talking about 24 because 23 is pretty much sewed up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. really the only thing that could change is whether Checo tanks it again after having a good result and drops to the back of the field for a little while, or if he can keep it, running number 2 where he should be in that car every race. But
Man, let's see here. Whoa. Man, Fernando and Lewis are way closer to him than I remember. So yeah, he better get his shit together.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Although I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit in a typical order, but I don't think Fernando, as it stands right now, poses much of a threat to Checo.
I agree.
I think it's more likely that probably one of the Ferraris, if not both of the Ferraris, pass him by the end of the season.
I think so.
Possibly George, and man, I don't know. The McLaren's got a long way to go, even though they're coming on with a vengeance. That might be too much. Because that's one thing, like, he's not going to stop scoring points.
Right.
He's just it doesn't look like he's going to be chunking points.
No, he's not. He's not. I don't think he's going to be, 18, 15 points. He's going to be a little further down, but he will still be scoring points, absolutely. But I mean that goes into, well, I guess we want to get into all that now, or we want to save that and kind of run our usual course.
Let's wait till we get to them.
All right, because there's a good little bit for that topic.
Yeah, so I mean, look, in terms of Max, right? Because that's where we got to start, because he's on top. Sprint, all of it, whatever, on top. I've been seeing a lot, and I feel like they made even more of it on the broadcast during qualifying on Friday, about his little back and forth with his engineer GP.
And man, that was all weekend.
It was, but it's not. Honestly, I think more of it was highlighted because of that initial kind of back and forth on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, I think GP maybe took what he was saying. I don't think they were talking the same language. I think Max was more, and it seemed to be apparent that the most crucial thing in that qualifying session, because it was wet going to dry, was keeping those tires right, not so much the energy. And Max wanted to do 2 consecutive hot laps, which you can still recharge your battery. That's what I don't understand. Like, you can still recharge your batteries even if that first initial hot lap, because they did hot, slow, hot. Right. He wanted to go hot, hot, hot. But even on that middle lap, you can recharge your batteries by still pushing the car.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, you might not put down your fastest lap ever, but you can absolutely keep a pace to keep the temperature in the tires, or to continue building them if that's what you're trying to do.
Right, and that's what Max was concerned about. And I think Max was speaking in terms of the tires. GP was speaking in terms of the battery, because that kind of came out like in the last sentence, right? Of that whole back and forth. And if that's it, everybody wants to jump on him like Max treats people like shit, but that's not the case at all. I think that shows you right there exactly why Red Bull is as good as they are on his side of the garage. He demands perfection. He didn't give a shit that he made it through. his quote was, "It doesn't." I'm going to quote the end of it. It was shit execution, and that's what Red Bull has. Even before they had the car to win all the time, they executed everything perfectly to the T.
Yep.
And that is why Max is not going to give away a championship ever when he has the opportunity to. If it's in their control, they will win it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that you see from all of the greats. They demand perfection. And, it's kind of evident that I think Leclerc is on that route. He kind of just goes in terms of that. You hear him getting pissed off a lot, and it's because of the execution.
Yep.
But like in Max's case, it doesn't matter if it happens one time out the season. That's too many times, and it needs to be addressed and corrected.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
they're like, oh, you couldn't talk about that after the thing. Why you had to talk about it on the radio? No, you had to talk about it right there because they still had another session to go.
Yeah, that's when it was prevalent.
Right.
We're here now. Let's talk about it. Not just gonna dismiss it till the debrief later when, man, there's something that is said by the program director, chief instructor at our HPDE events in the all hands meeting in the morning, right? If there's an issue, come to me, come find me. I can't fix a problem today on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's that popped into my head just kind of thinking about this. It's the same exact thing. If there's a problem, we can fix it now. We can't fix the now problem on Monday. I mean, sometimes you can, don't get me wrong. I mean, but relatively speaking, now's the time to address it. And that's what happened. But man, it's one of those things where I haven't heard. I mean, you've heard Max get kind of pissed off, if you will, but you typically don't hear any pushback from GP, right? And one thing you hear from the really good engineer driver duos is the engineer knows how to keep the driver calm, how to keep them focused, how to keep them in the headspace that they need to be in, right? You've heard it with Bono and Lewis for years. They have a great pairing, and Bono knows what to tell Lewis, how to tell him, when to tell him. If he starts getting worked up, he has a way of calming him down or just getting him to refocus. GP has the same with Max, but I saw a different GP this weekend than previously. And I don't know if it was just because it was like them just kind of taking little quips back and forth at each other all weekend. And I mean, I don't think it was anything serious. None of it. I think it was all, I mean, I doubt it's any kind of issue. I doubt
they
it's
forgot
even
about
anything.
It already.
Right. But nonetheless, it was something we really hadn't seen before.
Well, and there's one difference too. When that happened, Max is in the garage. He's not on track. I think that's a very big difference. I do not believe that that would have escalated to what it did had Max been driving.
Well, in the qualifying instance, right. But like even during the race, there was still some back and forth, and there was a different tone from GP, and there was a little bit of agitation. You could hear it, when he was telling him like, Max, please just do what we ask, just follow the plan, but and then
but that was another thing, and you're right on that. But that may have been like the one time that we've really seen a disconnect. But the one weekend that we've seen a disconnect where they're because again, I think they're talking about different things because in that one, Max was essentially wanting to know, because they told him to manage and back off, because he set out after Checo after that pit stop, and or whenever it was, however it played out, he set off after Checo, and I think that's when it was, right? He didn't get Checo until after the first pit stop,
right?
And he burned it up on that first couple laps.
Well, GP even called him out on that, right? I forgot how he said, but it was a real smart ass kind of remark, man. He was like, well, you used a lot of the tires on that outlap or something, something kind of real smart ass.
And Max was just in kill mode. He was going to get his place on the, in the pecking order. And I still feel like a simple answer would have just nipped that in the butt, because Max wanted to know if he was being told to slack off, is the other car being told to slack off? That's how it started. And you're right, though. GP snipped back at him and was like, just listen to what we tell you, or however he said it.
Yeah.
Follow instructions, whatever. And Max is like, are both cars backing off? Because I don't think he's programmed to drive like that if Checo wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
He's going to race and he's going to get him.
Yeah. And that's his mentality.
It doesn't matter who that it was Checo.
No, there was somebody in front of him.
They had the knowledge to share that, if they have Checo in manage mode.
Yeah. And another instance though, where I think, I don't know, I think, like you said, there was just a disconnect between them two the whole weekend. And maybe by the time the race came, they were kind of back and forth with each other all weekend, so at that point, you're just kind of generally angry with the person when they start talking, right? Because at one point, GP came on and told Max, like, hey, there's rain in 9 or 10 minutes or whatever he says. Not however he said it, not quite like yesterday, or I don't know, there was a bunch of transmissions, different engineers about it, whatever he said about it. And then, a lap later, he comes to him and he says, hey, do you think you can make your tires last another, 5 laps or something like that?
Well,
whatever it was he said. And like,
he wasn't
GP
about it.
Well, GP was asking like tire life, right? Can you make those tires go for another X number of laps? But Max comes back with, well, I don't know. You're the one with the radar, and they were not on the same wavelength there,
right.
Which again was
like
odd
GP,
for them.
He was implying that, but the way he said it was confusing.
I didn't think so. As soon as he said it, I knew what he was asking. Like he was like, can you make your tires last another, however many minutes or however many laps? I don't remember exactly what.
No, he didn't say it like that. He said something like, where it was just kind of open ended, where it was like, can you make it another, I don't know, 10 minutes or whatever. But yeah, it was implying on the tires, but he kind of switched from talking about rain coming in 10 minutes. Like, I don't know. It was just like we said, it was a disconnect.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just sharp, concise conversation.
Right. Yeah. And then in typical Max fashion, throw a little levity into it there at the end when he was like, I could just pull out another pit stop on Checo. We could come in and do some pit stop practice. Typical savage Max.
Yeah. Whew, what a beatdown though. What was wild was the way they showed it. They didn't really show Max Dyson through the field. They showed the start, turn 1, all that. And then they were on the leaders, they were on Checo and Charles,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden they cut into after the Camel Straight. The name of the turn.
La Source.
Is that La Source?
Yeah.
Okay. They cut from the backside of it, looking back down the straight, and you see all of a sudden you see Max coming into the turn right after Leclerc went in already.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, boom, done. And then they're like, Max already in P3. You know?
Oh, no.
It's like,
not La Source.
No, La Source is turn 1.
Lacombe's. Yeah.
Lacombe's, yeah.
My bad.
I knew that one right.
You passed the test. Good job.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just wasted no time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. All right.
So,
well,
look, I think Checo had a solid weekend, kind of. He had a solid regular qualifying and race,
mm-hmm.
which I think he desperately needed. Not so much the race. I think he needed that solid qualifying session.
Oh, no doubt.
Because his races have been fine, with the exception of he's starting way too far back.
Yeah, well, and he doesn't just chop through the field when he starts from back there like Max does.
Correct.
You know, he'll get stuck in those DRS trains. A DRS train doesn't make a damn bit of difference to Max.
Dude, it's unbelievable the way he just blasts through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a reason that he is where he is in the championship.
Man, look. We are witnessing one of the seasons of team, driver, car that is going to be talked about in eternity in F1.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just the level of complete dominance will be talked about for a very long time.
You know, I mean, look, everybody wants to talk about, oh, there's no way Checo has the same car. Why in the world, if they could produce a car that good, would they not have both of their drivers in it and be hemorrhaging all these points that Checo's been having, been giving up?
Yeah.
Especially Red Bull. They would want nothing more than to set the record for not only winning every race this season, but 1-2 in it every season, all season.
Right. Oh, if they could, they absolutely would. There is no reason why they would give Checo a different car, because they know, Checo knows, Max knows that with the same car, Checo is not on the same level as Max.
Mm-hmm.
And he is not a threat to him.
Plain and simple.
So
that's what it is.
Why would there be any worry about, oh man, if we give Checo the same car, he might threaten Max? No, that's not going to happen. So let's give him the same car and let's hope that, you know, he can have the dominance that Max is having, but for second place.
Why does nobody question, keeping that in mind, I have yet to see this question posed to Aston Martin, when early in the season, Fernando is putting it on the front row. 5 straight podiums? And Lance Stroll was meandering around P8, P10, sometimes not in the points, sometimes P6.
I'll tell you
How come
why.
the question hadn't been posed to him?
I'll tell you exactly why. Because Lance Stroll is still early in his career, and Fernando Alonso is Fernando Alonso.
Well, that's nothing to do with early in his career.
Well, no, it's really not, but it is. Like, he's not a world champion. He's not.
No, exactly. There's a massive disparity in talent.
Right. But what I'm getting at is it's Max. It's young Max. It's not, if you took the same level of talent and age Max 20 years, then it'd be the same thing. Nobody would question it because you'd go, oh, well, he should, right? But it's a higher level of talent, and everybody wants to question it just because what? Because he's early on in his career, relatively speaking. But when it's Fernando, it's just, oh, well, he should do that, you know?
But it's the same concept. Let's apply it to Albon and Logan Sargent.
I mean, I think the talent differential is a little bit less there.
Sure, I agree. Well, I don't know. I don't think maybe talent performance differential is probably on a similar level. Now, obviously, talent ceilings are different, but Albon's ceiling is here. Max's is not even in the picture. But Checo's ceiling is what with Albon, and Sargent's is way below that.
Yeah, I'm on board with that because I was gonna actually kind of correct myself and say, well, I don't think there's much of a difference between Checo and Albon.
I think there is I'm just talking about performance ceilings. Now, when I think there's a massive difference in what Checo has done in his ability to cope with the Red Bull pressures, right?
100%.
That has absolutely just crushed everybody since Max came into the team.
Yes.
And I mean, we've talked about this at length many a times, but he reset the bar of their expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it took them quite a while to realize, like, man, like no matter who we plug in here, unless we get another absolute elite driver who's, even an elite driver who's already seasoned, Max is just going to crush him. And it's not going to be a contest.
Yeah. On that topic, I don't think it would be wise for Red Bull to have another elite driver. Because that is, with just how Max operates, that is the quickest way to be in a Senna Prost situation, Lewis Nico, that's just not going to go well.
I 100% agree. There's all this rumor mill circulating constantly because, naturally, because Ferrari was struggling, McLaren was struggling and we were even speculating about Lando to McLaren. I mean, from McLaren to Red Bull.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would, if I'm Christian Horner and I have to fill Checo's seat with somebody from the grid, that's who I would be going after.
Mm-hmm.
Is Lando. I don't think there's been a lot of rumors about Charles being on their radar. And do I think those are real? No.
Mm-mm.
I also don't think it would be a good fit because Charles and Max are very similar. Personality-wise, trait-wise, competitive-wise. I'm not saying Lando's not as competitive, but his personality is very different.
Yes.
And he's a couple years younger, I believe.
Mm-hmm. He is.
So with my thinking was you let Checo play out his contract and then you go after Lando. Because Max has alluded numerous times he's not going to be around super long term like some of these guys. So if it gets to a point where, Max is, and I'm sure they're going to be having open discussions about this. I don't think it's going to be a secret that he just springs on them, hey, guys, I'm done.
Right.
But if it gets to a point, and I'm sure those conversations are going to be had pretty far in advance. So I feel like when you see another elite driver get paired with Max, get ready for his exit in a year or two.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because you don't want to be in a situation where all of a sudden you're not ready for it.
Right.
So they would 100% bring in the heir apparent before Max leaves.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I kind of suspect would happen if you went after Lando. I think Charles going there would be a disaster. Do I think it would be phenomenal from our perspective? Yeah, because I think that we could probably just make the podcast about that.
Yeah, right.
Plenty enough content.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a bunch of rumor mill BS. I don't see it happening. And I also, as much as Charles would love to jump into a car that's capable of that, he stated this week that his dream, his life goal was to win a championship with Ferrari. And that hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming from him. That has not changed. So I feel like that's winning for him.
Right.
Not doing what some drivers in the past have done and jumping in the best car available.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he's playing the long game.
Right.
Just like, all these rumors about Lando, and being in talks with them or whatever, and it's like, look, all right, a month ago, maybe I could have gotten on board. I think, me and you even talked about it. We were kind of talking about that being a possibility. But then, McLaren shows up in a big way, and it's like, man, with this newfound progress that they've made, dude, Lando has stuck it out with them this far.
Yeah.
He's not about to even consider jumping when, that light at the end of the tunnel just became really, really bright.
Yep.
He's not
another thing
to jump now.
Another thing, like all these young guys about the same age have kind of found their home in all the top teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm in F1, I want that. If I'm Charles sitting in a Ferrari or Max sitting in a Red Bull, I want to go race these guys that I came up with in all the different color cars.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, you're exactly right though. Like most all of them have found their home, right? Max, Charles, Lando, George, and it's like, man, looking at it, they have all fell right where they should be, right? If you look at all of their personalities, it fits to a T where they are and where they sit right now.
You're right.
The team, the personality, it matches. And I think all of them are kind of just solidified where they're at. And I don't think any of them have any intention of jumping ship given the opportunity. I honestly don't. I think they all, and it's more so talking Lando, George, and Charles, they want to be exactly where they are at. Charles wants to be in that Ferrari. Lando has clearly made a name for himself in McLaren and has solidified his position there. And he wants to be there because
Mm-hmm.
he could have left had he wanted to, but he chose to stick it out. And they all want to be in that long-term position, and they are all right there.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Let's jump into Ferrari. The weekend as a whole was kind of crazy, kind of up and down, and a lot of it they could really do nothing about. The things they could control, I feel like they did very well this weekend, which was it was not very, hang on. It was different from what we had been seeing. It was, they had qualifying where, well, actual qualifying on Friday for the race. Charles was second. Carlos was fifth. And, Carlos was half of a tenth. No, he was about a tenth.
Carlos
From
was
Checo. And less than a tenth off of Lewis.
Yeah.
In fifth.
Yeah.
So right in it, even though he's down in P5, he's right in it.
Yep.
And then you go to sprint. Let's see. Sprint shootout qualifying. Yeah, P3, P4. Sprint race, P4, P5. Which, that sprint race, it was wild. It was a changing track. It was started behind the safety car. And immediately upon the safety car going in, you had drivers going from the full wets that they were mandatory to start on, which I think is stupid.
Yeah.
You ought to just be able to start on intermediates. Like, I get it if you got to start behind a safety car, it needs to be a rain tire, but why not the intermediates?
Yeah, that whole thing, man, is kind of messed up. But yeah,
and it kind of just screwed them where their pit box was at. Screwed them.
Yes.
Because they just had to wait on the train of cars that was coming in both times, because you had half of them came in, half of them didn't.
Yep.
But the Ferraris couldn't double stack because they were nose to tail.
Yeah.
So Charles had to follow Max around on the first lap and do a full lap. Max couldn't do it because he'd have got absolutely swallowed up by that train of cars and had to sit there for even longer.
Right.
And both of the Ferraris just got caught out by the train following them.
Yep.
So
yeah, I think
it really shuffled them down the order, and there was nothing that they could do about it. Absolutely nothing. It was just going to be a consequence of their grid box. Had it been one of the tracks where the first teams are at the end, they'd have been in phenomenal shape.
Yeah, whole different story.
But it just didn't play out that way. So, Lewis actually finished ahead of them, but he had the penalty for his run-in with Checo, which, man, let's talk about that penalty a little bit. Even though we were on Ferrari, but I mean, that was pretty rough in those conditions.
Yes.
You know, he didn't overshoot it. He got up on the curb when they were battling it out, and you know, understeered a little bit because of, I'm assuming those curbs were like glass, and went into the side of him. You know, he pushed out a little bit. And look, Checo did give him enough space to make the corner if he'd have held it perfectly. But man, that was a pretty, I feel like that was a pretty harsh penalty.
Yeah, I mean,
given the circumstances and the situation, and I think that matters.
Given the circumstances of the weather, you know, and that goes both ways, right? The circumstances of the weather means that something like that is a lot more likely to happen under close racing.
Mm-hmm.
It also means that the field is not going to spread out quite like they would in a dry race. So therefore, every penalty is now, and you don't have as much time, right? The sprint was what?
It went up being 11 racing laps.
Right. It ended up
because
being
of the
11,
safety car.
but it was supposed to be, what was it?
15 or 14?
15, something like that. Right.
Yeah.
You know, so you've only got 11 laps. So any penalty is now exponentially more impactful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do agree that it was a little bit harsh. You know, and then it dropped him to what? Dropped him
in the 7th.
P7. Yeah. So I mean,
barely too.
Yeah.
He barely edged out George.
Yep. He had what's that? 7/10 or 7/100ths?
7/100ths, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it was definitely kind of harsh, you know, but here's the thing though. We have been screaming for more consistency, you know, and look, there was contact, he was at fault, here's a penalty. So it's hard to be too upset about, you know, that penalty being doled out, you know. At the end of it, yeah, conditions, yeah, everything, but there was contact. He was at fault.
Yeah, but
you kind of have to look at it as that as well, you know.
Sure, but I don't think contact warrants penalty, and that's my problem. Is, you know, like, okay, so we say that, but Carlos and Piastri come together, and Piastri punches the same hole in the Sainz's car, and there's no penalty. And they call it lap 1, turn 1, but why the hell does that matter?
Right.
I think that's a dumb rule. You know, like if you do something stupid, you deserve a penalty. If it's hard racing and something happens, then it happens. Stop discouraging people to race.
Oh, yeah.
That's my gripe. Like, 100%. Obviously, I hate the inconsistency of a lot of it, but there was nothing wrong with what Lewis did there. It was just something that happened because they were racing each other hard.
Yeah, but what it comes down to is, and you know, you said a minute ago, just because there's contact doesn't mean a penalty is warranted. Correct. But that contact, which they didn't know was going to happen at the time, but that contact did. I mean, it wasn't just, you know, a brush and a little piece of carbon fiber came off the floor or something, whatever, you know, like it was major, and it caused a DNF.
It cost him his race.
You know, but at the same time, you know, you have to just look at it as, you know, Lewis should have been more cautious knowing the conditions that he's going wheel to wheel in. So at the end of it, there was an incident. He was at fault. Here's a penalty. But to your point, yes, the same penalty should have been given to Piastri. It would not have mattered in the end of it, but nonetheless, the penalty should have been issued.
And maybe that's why he didn't see it, because he retired soon after. So there was no way to even assess a penalty, really. But either way, it's
Piastri's move was dumb, nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, Carlos had the right to that line, and I mean, he went to the inside of Lewis very early on the entrance to that turn, and Lewis was closing down too. If Carlos doesn't do that, Lewis is coming into him. If Carlos doesn't continue, on his path.
And Piastri said, afterwards, he was like, well, I had a nose in there. And at that point, it was too late to back out.
I disagree. I watched it back a bunch of times. I disagree.
Yeah, it really wasn't, because you saw Carlos's trajectory to the corner pretty early.
Right. You're exactly right.
Early. You had plenty of time to look at where you were headed, look at where he was heading, and see, oh, this isn't going to work. And guess what? The nose you had in there was not enough to give you...
You'd never made that corner. Never, ever in a million years have made that corner.
Right. Yeah.
I think that, the way it opened up, Carlos had nobody on his left, nobody on his right.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was able to set himself up and swing wide in order to set himself up for that dive down the inside of Lewis and take that corner much, much tighter.
Mm-hmm.
Had Piastri not been there, Carlos probably slingshots out of that corner.
Yeah, he had a fantastic line going into it comparatively.
And there was nothing. A lot of people made a lot about the way that he shot to the left and then came back right, but there was nobody there. He had all the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
So, and it made it look worse than what it was, because when he dove to go on the inside of Lewis, he snatched his brake a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But he was never in question of making that corner. I mean, he got it under control quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that move was initiated very early.
Yes.
Very early.
I feel like, look, I don't think Piastri got. Let's keep in mind, he's a rookie and he's new to racing at the front, and I don't believe he's raced at Spa.
No, I think they said this was his first.
Because the year that he would have in F2 was the year that it got canceled. Am I right?
I believe
because of all the weather.
Yes.
So they didn't have any support races.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's chalk it up to he's really never been in that situation, because even in the sprint race, they had a rolling start.
Right.
So, he didn't understand necessarily how to navigate that corner, because it's a completely unique corner to the circuit, to that whole F1 circuit of tracks.
But
either way,
let's also keep in mind
to pull himself out of
that these drivers are the elite drivers. These are the best in motorsports. And he has been through that turn how many times this weekend prior to that race start? So
the race start's completely different.
It is, but it isn't. The turn doesn't change. You know exactly what that turn looks like from entry to exit. You know what that turn looks like. So
sure, but I just imagine that's one of those rookie moments. The first time I'm not saying that incident. I'm saying the first time you navigate that turn off of a live standing start.
I mean, I'm willing to give him a little bit of the rookie move
And I'd be
forgiveness,
willing to
but
bet it probably crept up on it, like the aggressiveness, because of the way he was already so far on the inside. I would imagine it caught him off guard how fast that hole closed down. Where what looked like a gap never really was a gap.
maybe so.
But either way, I think Sainz was completely in the right on what he did. Had he not locked the brake, I don't think anybody would have questioned it. I mean, anytime, in my opinion, pretty much any time that somebody's front wing goes into a side pod in that manner, you weren't close enough to make that pass. Like when you're trying to make that pass. Lewis's was different because Checo was passing him on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So Lewis had no control over that gap that was created. Checo was in control of how big the gap was going to be.
Right.
Piastri was shooting a gap.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like anytime you come in there and make contact from into the back half of somebody's car, you're probably in the wrong.
Well, yeah. I mean, because look, flat out, turn one, lap one, race start, whatever, all goes out the window. We had this discussion earlier in the year about what the rules stated as what gives you the right to racing room.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Per those FIA rules, he didn't have it at no point.
Mm-hmm.
None. So right there, he has no leg to stand on.
Right.
Point blank.
But either way, look, I think Ferrari we'll back up a little bit in time to their dramatically different looking and conceptual upgrades that they brought. And it was stated from the onset that it may be a step back before it goes forward because they changed their concept. So I don't know. It's hard to say if it was a step back. I think it probably was, but they are clearly getting on top of it in dramatic fashion because they had no problem with tire degradation on a track that is, with the amount of high speed, flat out corners, it is very hard on tires.
High on tire deg. Yes.
And Lewis had no shot at Charles in the race.
Right.
In fact, they had no running. They had no dry running in practice all weekend. Correct. So they wasn't able to do long runs in the dry. So essentially, you were going off of last year's information or your best guess, combining last year's information with what kind of efficiency your car has this year in terms of fuel loads.
Mm-hmm.
So there became a point where after the second round of pit stops, Charles was just gapping Lewis. They reacted to the undercut. He came out about a second and a half in front. And within a few laps, he was 4.5, almost 5 seconds clear of him and was reeling in Checo at a pretty significant rate as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you saw that gap just dial back a little bit and maintain. And what was said after the race is that they were unsure of the fuel load, so they knew they had the pace in hand to hold off Lewis, whatever they did. So they had him conserving fuel. He was doing a lot of lifting and coasting, just making sure they had the fuel to get across the line. And did they probably were anticipating a safety car if I had to bet, which we didn't get.
Well, I mean, most races, they fuel the cars anticipating a safety car. You know?
They always fuel them low.
Yeah, so I mean, if a race goes green from start to finish, towards the end, they are all having to lift and coast to conserve. You know, and
which I
mean, all we had this race was a local yellow for Piastri.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, like you would see Charles maintain that gap to Lewis between 2.5 to 3.5 seconds. And it just bounced back and forth. And every time you saw it get under 2.5, instantly it would bounce back up to 3. Mm-hmm. And then he would just maintain again.
Yeah. Well, and you saw the gap from Charles to Checo steadily declining, at one point down to 3.5, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I'm saying. He was leaving Lewis in the dust and reeling Checo
in. And then all of a sudden that gap started declining, and you saw him just kind of drop back, and that's when he started just conserving.
I think that was one of those times where it was not worth the risk to try and attack Checo and make sure you secure the points, especially with the other car being retired.
Right.
You had to get a haul of points.
Yep.
And all of your competitors were behind you.
Correct.
Because they're not competing with Red Bull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as far as everything else is concerned, Ferrari won that race.
Right. So all right, let's jump into final thought on Ferrari. I believe after seeing what they were able to get, the pace they had, and what they were able to get out of their tires in this race, I would anticipate start seeing them working their way back up the pecking order. I'm not saying they're chasing out Red Bull, but they were comfortably ahead of everyone else in terms of pace. They didn't have to. They were able to run a super smooth strategy because they had the pace to just react.
Yeah.
So I think that all signs pointing positive in terms of their new development path and where they're going with it.
Yep.
It was a shame for them that Sainz got knocked out because he had been right there with Charles all weekend.
Yeah, that could have potentially been a very, very good weekend, very good race result, and points haul for them.
Yeah.
Yep. So, all right, let's move this down the line to Mercedes. So, Hamilton P4, Russell P6. So we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and Mercedes has made some improvements. They've made a lot of progress from where they were.
They as well went through a substantial concept change.
Yes, they did. But to your point you were making earlier, which is not incorrect, I think it may be a little bit more of both. They made some really good progress, and some others that were in front of them did not. Others, specifically meaning Aston Martin, They have dropped off a little bit and just not progressed like everybody else around them. Feel like we've said that might happen.
Hold on. Just pump the brakes.
But I'm not
Mercedes.
I know I'm not diving into them. Just laying the foundation of the topic of Mercedes. They have no doubt made a lot of progress. A little bit of that I think can be contributed to others surrounding them going, I wouldn't say the opposite way, just not progressing like they are. But I think now what we're going to see is what that new concept really has in store, right? They made a large change with that. And I think moving forward now, coming back from the summer break, is when we're really going to see what that concept change really has the potential to do. I think so far we've seen that it does have some good potential. It's still very early on for it. This weekend specifically, they didn't quite have the pace to keep up with Ferrari, but they had good pace. They had pretty good tire deg. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't horrendous, So I think with a little more refinement, I think they may pick up some and be back up in the hunt a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's something that we really don't know about them because the teams that were around them have been so, I guess, so fluctuant on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Ferrari, they never had a faster car than Ferrari. Maybe a track here or there that's absolutely suited their car, but in general, the pace of the Ferrari and the performance potential of the Ferrari has always been more than the Mercedes. It's just the Ferrari would wreck tires, and that's where Mercedes would get them. And, their ability to maintain pace in a race is what set them apart from Ferrari, along with their, undeniable run of reliability over these last however many years.
Mm-hmm.
That last year, their car was crap last year, but they finished with the first retirement due to mechanical malfunction was Abu Dhabi for Lewis. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that was the only one of the year for either of the drivers.
It was. Yep.
So I mean that alone is it just makes for an easy way to just stack up points.
Oh yeah.
And but it's I feel like they're the hardest team to measure. Has their pace gotten better? Has it gotten worse? What are they doing? Because everybody else,
all the reference points have been kind of up and down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they really haven't changed in terms of like their place in the order.
No, you're right.
There's always been somebody in that
has remained
pack. There's always
consistent.
Been somebody ahead of them and somebody behind them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When both Ferrari and Aston were struggling, McLaren jumped up there and was ahead of them.
Right.
So you just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was a much more eventful race weekend for George than Lewis. Lewis, as of late, has been kind of stomping a mud hole in George.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of his consistency, where he's at on the grid, never really out of sorts, just been kind of getting what the car has wherever they're at.
Mm-hmm.
George's kind of been all over the place. Kind of like Checo. He's been having some qualifying problems. His one-lap pace has not been good. And it's causing him compromise races because he doesn't have the car that Checo has to work his way back.
Right. Yeah. Now he definitely had a more solid weekend here than recently. When we say he was P6, I don't recall seeing him really doing a whole lot.
Well, it got to a point where, you had some teams back that were up in the points that,
he gained one by attrition. He started P8. He gained one by attrition with Piastri, and then he got by Lando,
who was struggling mightily. They had their. I feel like they were anticipating a wet race, and had that happened, they would have been a problem.
Yes, with watching them following people that were much, much faster in a straight line, but watching them just reel them in and be all over the gearbox of them on the infield, if you will. They were absolutely in a high downforce kind of mode, wet kind of mode. Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, let's see here. Let's not jump too far ahead of ourselves. Any more thoughts on Mercedes? I feel like
we need more time to really see much, and formulate any kind of thoughts on where they're headed.
Agreed.
So we'll see what Zandvoort looks like coming off the summer break, and maybe have a little bit better opinion to share.
You think Max goes at his home race for the minute mark on the field or on second?
I don't see why not.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump in here to Aston Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you alluded to it a little while ago. Earlier in the season,
just dropped a little breadcrumb there.
I'll have to go back and find what episode that is, but one of my biggest questions about them, because we've seen this before when it was Racing Point, they, for those not watching, we got air quotes going here, to come up with a concept and start the season very strong. And as the season goes, they're not that good at developing it and improving it. And again, I stand by my statement from when it was Racing Point, and they haven't done anything to disprove my thought this year, is you can't develop something that you didn't create because you don't understand it.
Yeah. Now, one little thing to that, which I'm not changing the course, the thought process on that, because we've both pretty much been in agreement on that from the get-go. However, the one thing with that is they do have, I can't remember his name, but he was Adrian Newey's right-hand guy from Red Bull. So there is part of it that says somebody understands the concept.
Maybe not.
Maybe it's the problem is one guy understands the concept and all the others that need to, on the mechanical side, on the aero side, on the, all the other guys around, they're not really catching where this guy is going or, whatever it may be. So I don't want to, we've kind of alluded to, they just stole an idea and don't know what to do with it.
I don't think they stole an idea.
And I think it's more so, honestly, I think it's more so the idea came from somebody who was previously working with somebody that had, very good ideas, and he kind of learned from that, and that's what he's taking. But nobody else in the team is capable of getting on board, I guess you could kind of say.
Well, it's, like there's certain people that are just different. Adrian Newey being one of them, obviously. So you have this concept, this idea, this general direction of what the car should look like, where the air should go. But you don't have the same team. You don't have everybody. I don't even think he probably understood everything about that deal, about that whole concept that Red Bull has essentially mastered. Because it's clear they've made steps as a team, Red Bull has, and developed this thing properly. And Aston Martin has blundered it.
Mm-hmm.
And you had, considering Aston Martin changed it completely from year to year, they were very close at the beginning of the season in terms of starting points, given the jump start that Red Bull had. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So for them to be so far off now, just I think more proves my point. In half a season, you've lost 40 seconds to a minute and a half worth of time over a race. And that's with Max essentially going into cruise mode.
Right.
So I think it's a inherent problem with that team structure that they do not have. They have yet to show the ability to design something themselves and have it be good.
Yeah. And regardless of how we try, regardless of how we try to reason it, the root problem still appears to be the same, right? They've got this concept, they've got this idea that they don't fully understand and don't fully know how to develop it. Doesn't matter what the reasoning is, that's been shown time and time again that it's a recurring thing,
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe over time they'll, kind of department to department will get on the same page. They'll figure it out. Maybe, who knows? but they're going to have to, because they can't just keep starting off every year strong and then just falling off mid-season.
Right. Yeah.
That's not a recipe that Lawrence Stroll is interested in.
Well, he better change something big time.
Yeah.
Because that's showing to be his recipe.
Right.
Because all this nonsense didn't start until he got there.
True. Yeah. And I mean, and look, I mean, kind of like I was saying, they've got guys from Red Bull, they've got guys from Mercedes, and maybe that's just kind of what we're left with because of that, right? They bought, guys from other teams, other successful guys from successful teams for their knowledge. But until all of those guys can work cohesively as one, you're only going to get but so far.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's just time that's needed for them to all learn how to do that. I don't know.
I almost feel like it just needs to be like almost like a factory reset on the way they think.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to change this mentality that we have to look at what everyone else is doing and go and do that. Not everyone else. We have to look at what the best team is doing and do that, because I feel like you lose your ability to critically think in a creative way when you do that, because you're not going from A to B to C to D. You're going from A to D, but the crucial pieces to getting to E and F lie within B and C.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's all a step process to develop these cars, and you can't
skip, you can't jump,
you can't skip steps.
Yeah,
because you miss crucial pieces that wreck the whole the air. I mean, now I think you have Ferrari that went down a drastically different direction than Red Bull did at the start of these regulations. Their concept worked equally as good as Red Bull's. I mean, it was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we had a brand new set of rules, two drastically different designs, and we had one of the best in terms of like race pace and on-track racing. If you take the reliability issues out, we had one of the best first half of seasons ever in terms of like just some of the on-track stuff we saw going on.
Yeah, at least,
and you literally went into every weekend
within recent years and recent regs. Yeah,
like you went into every weekend legitimately like, okay, if Ferrari doesn't blow an engine, we have no idea who's going to win this race.
Right.
And obviously, as we talked about at length, the rules, certain rules were implemented that kind of just blew that out the water and wrecked their concept. And they had to make a change. And they kind of kept, I guess, the core of that design, but essentially kind of incorporated and figured out a way to take pieces from other teams that work and incorporate that. But like when you look at that Ferrari, it still looks different than everything else.
Yeah.
Like the bathtub shape is gone, but it's still kind of has like a resemblance. Like if you can still kind of it's not nearly as aggressive as last year's, but
yeah. But having seen last year's and knowing last year's, you can see the remnants in it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
And clearly they have they're understanding what they're seeing and doing, and they're attacking their core problems. And I feel like still, man, like they're the closest chance to anybody being able to challenge Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're the only, if they get their tire dag under control, that's a game changer for that car.
Yeah. Because at that point, if you can control that, you can turn up the engines a little bit. You can run a little bit more pace. You can, your whole race is not based around babying your tires because that's your Achilles anymore, right?
We know they have essentially like DRS not in this conversation. They have the most powerful engine. So if you get on top of your tire dag issues, now all of a sudden maybe you can run a little less downforce.
Mm-hmm.
You can run it where you would want to run it instead of having to run more to protect the tires, and you can start to take advantage of that engine power advantage that you have over the field.
Right.
So I think Monza is going to be a very interesting race.
It should be.
Because, I said this, me and you, I don't know if I said it on here or not, but me and you discussed it. And I said that right after we kind of started seeing what this car was about in terms of like where the direction they went and really making it eliminating drag and just kind of what they were talking about, they were trying to achieve. If you put all those puzzle pieces together, it sounds like they're trying to win Monza. Because we all know what that means to that team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you're Ferrari and you have to pick one race,
mm-hmm.
That's it. You've got Monaco and Imola, but those don't compare to winning Monza.
It's Monza.
Winning Monza is the height of winning in a Ferrari, right? Winning at Monza is it. So if you have to try to gear yourself up for one, knowing that, look, anybody on the calendar or in the paddock knows they're not beating Red Bull, right? Yeah, you're still trying to beat everybody else, constructors points and championship money and all that. But at this point, you kind of can be like, all right, look, guys, we're not going to win any of these races, but maybe, just maybe, if we do this right, we can pull off Monza. And you say that in the Ferrari garage, and what's everybody do? They start yelling and screaming, and they're like, "Let's go, let's do it!" Everybody's on board.
I think they might be sneaky good at Las Vegas too.
Oh man, I don't even really care what happens at Las Vegas.
No, it's a stupid track, but it's a bunch of straightaways and 90-degree turns.
Yeah, it is.
And then there's turns that aren't even turns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyway.
But it's Vegas, and we want to drive F1 cars in front of the water cannons.
Bro, build a badass track in the desert right next to the city.
Right. Like there is a vast amount of desert right off the strip. Right behind the strip.
You can take a little piece on the straightaway, on the main straight of your brand new state-of-the-art racetrack. You can take a piece from every single casino that's on the strip that you want the spectacle for and put it right there.
Yeah.
Because it's a blank slate. You can put the fake Eiffel Tower. You can put the freaking
put the water cannons
at the Bellagio. You can put the Caesars, whatever you want. They can put their name on everything.
Right. Or, I don't know. Let's build the track right there off the strip, right? I mean, I could be wrong in saying like right behind the strip, but I think it's like right behind the strip they could build it. And guess what? Make it to where for the F1 race, you just open up a couple gates, and guess what? Now you're on the street. You go down, you hook a right onto the Vegas Strip, you go in front the Bellagio or whatever, and you come back onto the actual circuit that they just built.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
that would be awesome.
There you go. Problem solved. Shit.
I need to go look at Google Maps to see if that's possible.
Right?
But that would be insane.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's possible. It makes way too much sense. We're not going to do that.
No. We want a real street race. I'm sick of these freaking street races.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
Checo's
before we
dying
get on,
for
before we get on
24
that
street races.
Yeah. That's a whole nother soapbox of a podcast we don't need to get into right now. All right. Let's move this on down the line. Let's talk about McLaren. What
a resurgence.
We've touched on some, but let's get into a little bit more. Yes.
How about before we even jump into the jump that they made, how's about the move of bringing in Oscar Piastri and how freaking good he's been this year?
Yes.
He's been on Lando's tail.
Mm-hmm.
Almost from the jump.
He has done very well. Very well. Rookie of the year already. Calling it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, his competition is Sargent.
Yeah, I mean, because DeVries is no more, so there goes that competition.
Yeah, he lost. But yeah, man, look. Zach Brown kept on saying, wait till the upgrades. And man, did they deliver.
God, did they?
I mean,
Yep.
You know, we talked about Aston Martin making a huge jump over the offseason. I think this is even more impressive.
Oh, it absolutely is. That was over a whole offseason. This was over, a weekend, essentially.
Well, yes, they've been developing this for quite a while. And the reason it wasn't an off season is because it was going to take longer. Why it wasn't at the onset of the season.
Right.
But I mean, by the time they introduced it, other teams were already bringing upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
So, like your new starting point was 5 races in.
Yeah.
Not like the other teams, their new car starting point was at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It is just unbelievably impressive what they did.
Yes. It is. It absolutely is. Although this weekend obviously did not look as great. I mean, Lando still finished P7.
But look at that sprint, man. Oscar was P2.
Yeah, right?
He led for a while.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't last too long once Max got hold of his tail, but
yeah. As we talked about though, was
God, how about
the car not being set up for a dry race.
How about that pass though that Max put on Oscar? Just it shows you the level that he's at. Yeah. The way he set him up to take Eau Rouge at a bad angle to make him defend going into Eau Rouge and Radillon. I mean, that was just masterful, dude.
It was.
And then Max swipes back, hits that series of corners perfectly, and just rockets past them.
Yeah.
I mean, that was beautiful, man.
Yeah. Speaking of Max in Eau Rouge, how about that little pucker moment he had in Eau Rouge during the race?
It was bad when he was like, holy shit, I almost lost it.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I mean, normally he'll have a little bobble or something, and he's on the radio like laughing, right? This time he was like, "Oh shit, I almost lost it." Like, dude, that was Whew. And man, it's freaking wild. Just I know we already talked about Red Bull and all. Just to backtrack though, to see that right on TV, and I don't remember who it was. It was a couple different times, but it was somebody in particular at Coda last year where we were at in turn 6. Dude,
Oh,
just how fast these
those
guys,
twitches are.
these twitches are, right? Like, it's mind-blowing how fast their reactions are to be able to catch these, because these twitches, it's not like it's just a slow oversteer of the back end coming around. I mean, it's a snap, and just that quick, they're back countering it and just driving out of it, and to see that happen in Eau Rouge, it brought back the memory of watching that in person at Coda, and it's just freaking impressive.
Yeah, I want to say it was Lance Stroll in qualifying that we saw at Coda at 6.
Might have been. Oh, you know what else was a bit of a kind of a throwback to Coda, and it more aggravates me than anything. Do you remember the sound of sitting in that turn 6 grandstand? Yeah, that's all you hear, right? You don't hear
Until
the
they
cars,
patch you up.
you don't hear the engines, you just hear them rolling over the curbs, right? On TV,
You
as
heard
they
it.
go through the first corner, go over the curbs in Eau Rouge, you hear that. It's like, oh my God, man. Like, I don't want to hear the curbs. I want to hear the motor screaming at 17,000 RPMs. That's what I want to hear.
Dad's
But
gonna freak out about that. He's
here
gonna.
we are with sounds like my damn phone vibrating.
It does.
Like,
This is exactly
man.
what it sounds like.
And this was the first time I recall since being there in
But
person.
hold
This is
on,
the
time
first
out.
time I recall hearing it actually on TV.
No, you hear it at Austria on the final series of corners.
Did you?
Yeah, I remember it there for sure.
Okay,
Because they
I
get
don't
so
remember
far
hearing
up
it.
on those curbs in
It
that
didn't jump out at me like it did
they get
here.
so far up on and ride the curbs for so far
Yeah.
in that last series in 9 and 10 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's gonna drive Dad crazy.
Oh yeah.
But
He's it's funny too, because here lately he's been sharing a lot of F1 videos that compare the V8s to the V10s, or just
yeah,
the noise levels, and it's like, oh God, man, he's gonna be
but I think
upset.
the performance of these cars are gonna blow him away.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
Like, dude, I'm to anybody that's listening, like, watching these cars go through the Esses and Coda head on
At quality pace.
is unbelievable. It's
Yes.
unfreaking real.
Yes.
I cannot wait to go watch qualifying there again.
Yeah. Now, one thing, getting off topic here, we'll come back on track here in a minute, but
We're right back into form, bro. Look at us.
yeah, I know, right? It's like we never even left. One thing though, at our previous races, Montreal and Indianapolis, back in the V10 days, we didn't get to see a section in person, such as 6, 7, 8, 9 in Coda like we did, right? Now, granted, in practice we were sitting at turn 1, which
No, 3, 4, 5, 6.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And then 7.
Yeah. Okay, you're right.
7's not in the S's.
Right. But, in practice, sitting in turn 1, you could kind of equate, the speed, the braking to like when we were in the hairpin in Montreal, but we never really got a reference of those old cars to compare to just how insane these new cars are at speeds, and cornering and agility. It'd be really nice to have sat somewhere where we had a reference for that, but
Yeah, like if they still had it at the same track.
Yeah, but nonetheless, like it's still freaking amazing. God, I can't wait.
Yeah, it is. But, you know what you do here though is these new cars, when they're coming straight at you before they get to you, you hear them cutting air.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which I thought was kind of wild. Like you legitimately hear them cutting air.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, well, the name of the game is freaking air.
Well, you never heard that before because they were so loud.
Yeah.
But
give me the noise back.
Yeah, no doubt.
Give me 16, 17,000 RPMs of a 3-liter V10. I think it was.
That was a 1 point something.
Did they get down? No, huh?
Look it up.
Did they get down? I know like the V8s got real tiny.
Look it up. I'll wait.
Boom. F2003 3-liter V10. God, I hate it when I'm right.
Look further down the line. That's 03. They didn't get rid of the V10s till
we were there 03, 04. So that's the topic, is when we were there.
What, are you looking at something that confirms mine?
I mean, let's see. Let's see.
In the meantime, I've switched to
in 2005
barrel pick and a Kentucky Spirit Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit single barrel.
In 2005, the 3-liter V10 engine was permitted no more than 5 valves per cylinder. And then in 2006, it went V8, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Boom.
Okay, you got one over the length of this podcast.
I'll take it. It's where I'm staking my flag.
I hear you. Enjoy it. Doesn't happen often.
When it comes to history and little facts like that, no, it doesn't happen very often. So I'm gonna enjoy this one.
Roll around in it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Look, McLaren, they're kind of new in. It's pretty much been since Silverstone where they really brought that first upgrade package to the new concept.
Yeah.
And that really jumped them up the field.
Yep.
So that's 3 races. Let's see where they go from here. Let's see. Zandvoort's another pretty unique track, and then Monza's another obviously unique track. So let's see what they look like after Monza, and then I think we'll have a great idea of what this new path is potentially capable of going into next year.
Mm-hmm.
We'll really get to see the kind of trajectory they're on.
Yeah.
Which either way, it's an astonishing jump. And if nothing else, they're going to be fighting for best of the rest. But let's see if they can continue to make strides, and if they have a solid concept across all of these tracks,
Yeah.
they're going to be sitting pretty. They're going to be in a very good spot.
Yes. Indeed.
So the next thing that I want to get into is Alpine.
Yep.
I don't think it's necessary that we run through every single team tonight. I mean, look, we can knock out real quick. Alfa Romeo, Williams, and Haas. Look,
the Williams was mighty slippery, and Alfa Romeo and Haas were just kind of
not good.
There, not good.
But man, I mean, I don't know. I thought the Williams would be much better than they were.
Yeah, I feel like for the pace that they had on Sunday, I feel like they didn't get the result that I really thought they would have ended up with based on what you saw out of them, right? But the problem is they had no, again, I'll air quote it, no infield pace.
Right.
You know, they had pace, you know, from La Source through Eau Rouge, Raidillon, Kemmel Straight, and then that was about it. And then, I mean, on the back straight through, was that Blanchimont? You know, but
that's awesome.
They didn't have it anywhere else. You know, they got gobbled up elsewhere.
Bro, if I went to a European race outside, it would be Monza or Spa that I would want to go to first. If I couldn't go sit in Eau Rouge, it would be Blanchimont.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that, like, watching these cars, because that was never a flat corner, like, historically.
Right.
And it is now. So I can't imagine what that looks like.
I think it used to be flat, like, during quali runs, huh? Just like Eau Rouge. I mean, it's flat during quali, but not during the race.
Yeah, but back in the day, like, even in the early 2000s, and, you know, Eau Rouge was in quali, like, you had to, it was one of those things, like, you had to commit beforehand, like, hey, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to set myself apart in this qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that everybody was doing.
No. It was,
and it wasn't something that even the best drivers were doing all the time in quali. It was that one run, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, the car's feeling good. The track's feeling good. There's plenty of grip out there. I'm on a new set of tires. We're going to send it on this.
And it was really rare when they ran them stupid freaking groove tires.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
But anyway.
All right. So, yeah. So the rest of them were, whatever. Nothing spectacular. Nothing crazy.
Alfa Romeo. We're going to get into Alpine and AlphaTauri, but Alfa Romeo, Williams, Haas, man, it was, let's call it mediocre at best, even for Williams. Yeah. I thought this was a track that they would excel at a little bit, even despite knowing that they would suffer on the infield, on the sector 2.
Mm-hmm.
My thought was, their sector 1 would be blinding.
And
they would give back a little bit of time. Like, let's say they were chasing somebody, right? They would close them down, sector 1. They would give back time, sector 2. They would close them down again, sector 3.
And net result would be closing them down.
And then pass them on the next sector 1.
Right. Yeah, and I think what ended up happening was, you know, they were strong in sector 1, strong in sector 3, terrible in sector 2, and the net result over the lap was not a gain. It was a loss.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
But even still, I still don't think they weren't as as dominant in Sector 1 as I thought they would be. Not dominant, but just like raw brute speed.
Well, I mean, there was times you saw him, holding the gap to the guy behind him that had DRS, and the gap didn't change.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean a ton.
I mean,
when you're talking about these midfield cars,
it's all dependent on
a lot of those lower teams are so inefficient and hit or miss with their aerodynamics that really doesn't even mean anything.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I get that, and it's also variable lap to lap, right? What kind of run did they get through Eau Rouge and Radillon and all that? But nonetheless, I mean, yeah, at the end of it all, it was not the result that I think we kind of expected them to have.
Mm-hmm. But
all right, so let's dig into Alpine some.
Yes, go ahead. You lead this one off.
So we've got Otmar Safenauer, team principal, and Alan Permain, sporting director, I believe was his title. Yes. Yeah. Are parting ways. There has been so much apparent turmoil in that team. There are so many opinions that I could kind of form on this, and I don't really know. Man, I just don't know. Like there is something fundamentally wrong coming from above. That Otmar was there for, I don't know, how long has it been?
Year and a half.
Yeah, something like that. And I mean, look, not only Otmar, right? You had all the shit with Piastri. And then you had Laurent Rossi being pulled back and moved to like special operations or something. And then you've got, who was the other guy? Their chief technical officer, Pat Fry. He's leaving as well, which nobody really knows who he is. I didn't know who he was until I read this article. But your chief technical officer is also leaving. Dude, there is just so much apparent turmoil within that team and so much, just call it toxicity.
Well, the crazy thing is, and I was telling you about this earlier, yesterday or Friday or something. He was the latest guest on the Beyond the Grid podcast, which is absolutely phenomenal. If you don't listen to it, it's a must for any F1 fan.
Oh yeah.
And I was telling David how there's such a disconnect between what he was saying and what some of the upper management was saying, that it struck me as very, like, even in his interview when nobody had any idea in the public that he was going to get fired, or how do they say it, come to a joint decision to move on. It was glaringly obvious that they weren't on the same page, and it was like he was trying to put into the public eye that, like, these things take time. And there was multiple things that he said that just scream they have different timelines than what is realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the root of it all. They want all these results now.
Yeah.
And that just does not happen in Formula One.
Yeah,
Look,
and he stated multiple examples of multiple teams of, minimum 5 years, right? He stated multiple examples of
look,
that.
the greatest example of that, there's two in three really, in recent history. Okay? You got Ferrari. No. You got Ferrari in 96 when they hired Jean Todt. They brought in Schumacher, and then the following year, Ross Brawn. All right? 96, maybe it would have taken 4. Maybe they'd have won it in their 4th year had Michael not broke his leg. Maybe. Probably. It was kind of looking like it was going to go that way before he broke his leg.
Mm-hmm.
They did win the Constructors that year. Even with Michael's replacement, Mika Salo. But nonetheless, it was 5, 96, 97, 98, 99. They won it in 2000. Red Bull bought Jaguar in 2005, I think.
Was it 05?
2005 or 2006 was their first year as Red Bull. They won their first one in 2010.
Looks like it. Yeah, 2005 season, it looks like is when it was Red Bull. Looks like they bought him in 04.
The end of 04.
Yep.
And yeah. So they won in 2010, 5 years. Maybe even 6 seasons. 05, 06, 07, 08, 09. Yeah, 6th season they won.
Mm-hmm.
But you saw it on the back half of that 09 season. They were the fastest car in the back half of that season. But Braun had built such a gap and they were able to pull out a few races on the back half that kept them with the championship, kept Jensen with the championship. Mercedes took over from Braun.
Yeah,
not as tired.
You kind of crossed over there. You were still talking Red Bull, but you said about buying Braun.
Well, yeah. Well, no, but I'm saying like Red Bull made it to 2010, but then Mercedes crosses into Braun. Like those two intersect because Red Bull was fighting against Braun, and then that became Mercedes the following year.
All right, I see the link you were making there. All right.
Yeah, so Mercedes takes over from Braun, and Braun didn't have any money to develop the car throughout that year, so they were essentially starting massively behind by the time they got their hands on it. And, Red Bull had just been like freaking full go rolling at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, 10, 11, 12, 13, year number 5.
Oh, look, 5 years later. Yep.
And all of a sudden, like, freaking Alpine, I don't know who the fuck they think they are, but they just want to rock up and change everybody out every year and a half. Like, bro, like it's been 14 months and we're not competing with Red Bull. Yeah. What the hell?
Mm-hmm.
What the freaking hell?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
Like, you better get it together in the next 2 months or your ass is on the street.
Yeah, right. Well, and then the 100 race timeline.
The what?
The 100 race timeline.
Oh, yeah. Which they had. Did you listen to that episode?
Yeah.
Nobody knew when that timeline started.
Right. Yep. Otmar knows when his started.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're at race 30. So, I mean, we still got 70 more to go. We still got a lot of time and we're heading in a good direction, But, dude, I'll tell you, you know what?
There's so much disconnect.
More so than the disconnect of that 100 race timeline comment You know what really stood out to me was when TC asked him about the comments that were made by Laurent,
Mm-hmm.
and TC was like he was searching. It felt like he was searching for him to kind of chastise Laurent, right? Which I get it. At the time this aired, like I'm sure he knew he was leaving, but that wasn't public knowledge. But
Maybe not.
at the
The
same
way they
time,
operate, maybe not.
yeah, maybe not. But at the same time, dude, the way he just backed Laurent there, right? Like now he said all the right things. He in the interview. He said like I would have gone about it a different way, but I understand where those comments came from. I understand the pressure he's under. I understand like the way he backed him tells me that he wanted to be like, well, yeah, the dude was dead nuts on. Like that's exactly it.
I
But
don't think. I feel like
you
okay.
know, I feel like
If
he wanted to agree, saying that there's some messed up shit, and and it needs to be corrected. But obviously, he's not going to do that because that'd be a stupid thing to say. But I feel like he was backing him in such a way that it was kind of shouting out to me, especially knowing what we know now, right? Knowing that he's now leaving and kind of looking at this and possibly reading into stuff more because of what we know. But I kind of read into that as like he really wanted to be like, yeah, there's some messed up shit here, TC, but he couldn't or couldn't or wasn't going to, wouldn't, but yeah.
sorry, something just hit my roof.
You good over there?
Something just hit my roof. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what it is. Oh, not my roof. It's my window. It's a freaking locust just slammed my window. Jesus. Good Lord. Thought something was coming through there. But no, you're right. But and man, that was like that was a I still want to work in F1 answer.
Yes. 100%.
Supposedly,
Right, yeah, I mean,
he's already got something else lined up. It just hasn't been announced yet.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what's going on, he's going to be professional about it. He's not just going to sit there and bash Laurent or whatever, whoever it may be, whether it's Laurent or somebody else.
Bro, the way that place has been a shit show, man, at his age, the amount of money he's made, I wish he'd have come out and been like, you know what? F him, F him, F him, and you, F you too. Because y'all are freaking insane.
Yeah. You're cool. F you, I'm out.
I hate you. I hate you. I don't even know you, and I hate your guts. I mean, dude, like this has Alpine reminds me so much of the Jaguar project. Resources, factory team, and you just run it into the ground with corporate bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
You got 30 Chiefs and 2 Indians.
Yep.
And it doesn't work.
No, it does not.
It has been proven time and time again. Like, I don't understand how people don't read the blueprint that has been laid out over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, because they all think they've got a better answer, and they all think they can,
And that's fine, but it's been proven so many times. Like, here is the structure when it comes to an F1 team. One guy has ultimate control. He needs to be the right guy, but it's got to be one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulls the strings, to everything. It's got to be a guy that's a hard ass when he needs to be, that can get along with everybody in most times, and is uniquely versatile in terms of his understanding of everything.
Yep.
You know, it's not by mistake that Jean Todt was as successful as he was. Ron Dennis at McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think Frank Williams fits the role because that's not a big old giant team. That was always a small outfit.
Yeah.
It's a completely different structure.
Very different.
Then moving into newer times, Christian Horner. Toto. You know, like, and then Toto.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it has to be, dude. Ferrari's never going to be what they were until they adopt that. And I think that's what is happening now with Fred there. And I think they're not coming out and saying it, but I think that's evident with the amount of changes that's happening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think Fred has come in and has assumed the same style of position that Christian and Toto occupy. And obviously, it's going to take a little bit of time to get everybody on board. It wasn't smooth with Toto initially.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I mean, he came in with Ross Brawn, and look, I mean, let's be real. Ross Brawn is the reason that team became as successful as it is, or as it was.
Mm-hmm.
Toto is the reason they maintained that success.
Correct.
Because he was that right kind of leader that understands his own deficiencies and knows where to put people and who to allow more freedom in this area. You have much more control than in this area, which is my expertise. I'm where all the decisions lie. Yep. But at the end of the day, everything runs through me.
Yep.
Yeah. And I feel like Alpine isn't even sniffing on that trail.
No. No.
They're bringing in,
and their new
might be on the pit wall next week or next month.
What, their new CEO or whatever his position is? Hang on, I had it pulled up here.
They didn't bring Flavio back,
right? Bruno,
is he still banned? Didn't they
probably so?
Didn't they lift his lifetime ban or something, or is that still in effect?
Let's see.
Because he could do it. Boy, would that mix up freaking... would that be awesome? You remember those meetings on Drive to Survive? Talking about porpoising? You can imagine Flavio was in on that as well.
Oh, yeah. FIA has lifted its life ban on Flavio Briatore for his involvement in Crashgate. Holy shit, that was a long time ago they lifted that. That was 2010.
Yeah, I thought I remember hearing that. What's the point of having a lifetime ban if you lift it after a year?
Right. Yeah, because it was in 2009 that he was banned there, and Crashgate shit went on.
Crashgate happened in 2008.
And yeah. I don't know. But
after he won Lewis the title.
Yeah. So Bruno Famine. I'm not sure how you say it. I'm sure we'll hear it soon enough.
Maybe not, because nobody knows.
Yeah, right. He is. Let's see. All right. Come on, internet. There we go. So he is now the VP of Motorsports, will serve as interim team principal. So this should go swimmingly.
Right. Bro, but like how much does this just absolutely line up to that whole shit show that was last season when Fernando left and just started that whole landslide of things to happen?
Oh yeah, it's all just, it kind of continues. It falls right in line with everything we thought was going on last year when all that was happening. And then the stuff with Piastri and all, like it all just continues to make even more sense.
I'd be willing to bet that, I don't know, man. Like I would find it hard to believe that Otmar would have agreed to do that interview with TC on Beyond the Grid, knowing that he was going to leave.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like the timing of it, because they tell you when that's going to release. It released the week that he got let go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very true.
I don't know if, as dysfunctional as they are, I don't know if Alpine would have even knew.
Yeah, right.
Because all that shit runs through, like, they go through the team to schedule Otmar, and then somebody just tells Otmar, like, hey, bro, you got to do this thing with TC. You know what I mean? Like, that's all run through the PR department and all that. Somebody would have caught wind of that and shut it down.
Yeah.
Or just been like, oh, no, this ain't a good week. Let's kick it down the road.
Right. Knowing what was about to play out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Very true.
So the last thing, and definitely not least, that we need to get to, well, secondly, no, before that, Gasly podiumed on the freaking sprint race.
Yeah, he did.
And Ocon had a solid actual race.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was actually a great weekend for Alpine.
It really was.
In terms of the on-track stuff.
It was. Mm-hmm.
But, all right. To wrap it up, we haven't had a podcast since he came back, but the Honey Badger is back on the freaking grid. Danny Rick
is back.
And, man, I know, like, it's not like he's lighting the world on fire in terms of, like, he's sticking that Alpha Tauri up in P6. But he's looked like his old self in a terrible car.
Yeah.
He's had these flashes of, bro, that's the old Danny Rick.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It does not look like McLaren Danny Rick in the least.
Yeah. No, it looks like the Danny Rick of old.
It looks like he's going to be able to get a handle on this car and kind of show out as well as is possible by, the next couple races.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously this weekend was terrible timing for it to be wet the whole time leading up to a race.
Yep.
I've been having so much going on. Did we have rain a bunch in Hungary as well?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's time to get him some dry freaking running, and let's see what he can do, because I'm ready for him to just be the old Danny Rick and last at a late breaker and start sending some shit.
Yep.
Lick it.
Lick the stamp.
Yeah.
And fucking send it.
That's right.
I'm here for it.
So, with that being said, Yuki actually had a great freaking race.
Yeah, shocking. in the points,
Yeah.
P10.
Right?
8 point.
Yeah.
So
look,
all right.
let's wrap this one up.
Let's call it a wrap.
Great to be back.
Yep.
And we're going to have another one coming at some point in this summer break. What do you want to say? You not next week, but the following 2 weeks from this one.
I think that works. We have to check the old schedule.
We'll pencil it in.
Yeah, we'll pencil that in there, and we'll do our best to stick to that. But if that doesn't work, just stick with us. Those of y'all that are catching this that have been with us, we do appreciate y'all sticking with us through our little hiatus there. Like Frank said, it was just a lot of stuff going on, and it was just in our best interest, time and whatnot to just step back for a minute, and a lot of other obligations that needed to be taken care of and take priority. Nothing bad, nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary, just life, life, work, family, etc.
Kids' interests. Well, I'm coaching 2 football teams.
Yeah.
Kind of out of the blue. And
that did kind of come up out of nowhere.
Yeah, 1 was fine. Two's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
So, but yeah, we're gonna do our best to get back on track here and keep things a little more regular. But in the meantime,
we're back.
I will leave you with a little quote.
Hold on, before you hit your quote, I gotta get a plug in. Since we have last been on air, if you recall, when this happened, I gave our LSU Lady Tigers, a shout out for winning a national championship. And we have since added another national championship in Omaha.
That will be
the College World Series.
Hoisted
the trophy in Omaha. Not only that trophy, but the Jello shot record got fucking obliterated by upwards of 50,000 Jello shots. Ole Miss thought they were cool and had 18,000. LSU went over there and did work and consumed 68,000 Jello shots.
Jesus Christ.
So suck it, Ole Miss. And congrats to one of the all-time teams, man. Look, we had the number 1 and number 2 overall pick in the MLB draft following the national freaking championship. Suck it, every other baseball program in the country.
All right, can I give my quote now?
Go ahead. Back to Formula 1.
Good job, LSU. Congrats. All right. Leave you with this one. And this comes right from the Beyond the Grid podcast with TC and Otmar. This quote comes from Otmar. Very fitting here. And I may not be word for word on this. I went off of memory. So just give me that much. You have to run an F1 team like pirates, not like a Navy. And dude, I think he's dead nuts on there. Like if you look at Red Bull, they're a bunch of fucking pirates.
I think that was directed at somebody.
I think so. It absolutely seemed like
actually,
it was.
The way Alpine runs it, probably a group of people.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, from straight from Mr. Otmar, another little tidbit of discontent from him, we'll say, with the Alpine team. But all right, that'll wrap this one up. It's been fun getting back in here. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yes, sir.